This computer. Good morning, everyone. So this is our virtual meeting for the Avon Downtown Development Authority. We're going to give an overview of this authority process. We've got a little presentation we're going to walk through. We are going to record this so that it can be available for others who are interested and post it on our website. But I do want to introduce Avon staff. I'm Eric Heil. I'm the town manager. Carl Hanlon is our town attorney. Kristen Kenny Williams is our stakeholder outreach consultant. Matt Peelsticker is our planning director. Patty McKinney is our deputy town manager. And Miguel is our town clerk. And Jenna is our senior town planner. We've got a couple members of the public, and we appreciate you joining today. And we want to make this process as informative and open as possible as we roll into it. So with that said, what I'd like to do is share my screen, and I've got a presentation we can go through, and myself and Kristen and Carl primarily will be answering questions. So, and hopefully this all works the way it's supposed to. Oh, are you seeing the broken screen or the full screen?
Broken.
Okay. How's that?
There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Always a challenge. Okay, so as I said, myself, Carl Hanlon, Kristen Kenny Williams, we're going to be primarily walking through this. Oh, come on. I apologize for that. There seems to be a little quirky with it changing slides. Okay, so meeting agenda, welcome and introduction. We're going to walk through what the purpose of this DDA is, the boundary map, discussion of eligible voters and the special election process, summary of the financial structure, and the DDA implementation schedule and next steps. So Downtown Development Authority, it's a statutory local government authority that is available for municipalities. It's sort of a companion authority to urban renewal authorities, very similar, a little bit different, but very similar. Can promote, the statutory purposes are promote sound economic growth of the community's central downtown commercial core. One way that it's a little different from urban renewal authorities is you can designate your central commercial core and do a downtown development authority once, cannot do multiple urban renewal authority plans like you can under the urban renewal authority statutes. It does allow for new sources of funding. We'll be talking primarily about tax increment funding, but it does also allow for property tax increase. That is not what the town of Avon is contemplating. As we'll talk about in a little bit, we're looking at creating a new source of funding to help with workforce housing, as well as infrastructure projects that support increased housing and infrastructure and public amenities and facilities that support an increased residential population. We'll be talking about projects that using this as a funding mechanism to help support projects that support new development and redevelopment of areas. And then under the statutory process is alleviate or prevent blight conditions. And I think in our circumstance, it's more on preventing blight conditions in the context of doing what we can with wise, thoughtful investment to keep Avon's core vibrant and on a trajectory that it continues to improve over the next several decades. Downtown development authorities do have a 30-year life once they are formed, and there's the option to extend it for 2 10-year additional periods. So the Central Business District, this is the draft map that we had presented to council. And you can see it includes the West Town Center, that's the area west of Avon Road. East Town Center, that's our area that's primarily retail shopping plazas on the east side of Avon Road. Nottingham Station, which is where the Burger King, Starbucks, Avon Bakery is. On the north side, the gas stations, north side restaurant, and there's I think a automotive and tire repair store. Then the Village at Avon commercial, Village at Avon Valley Floor area, all the way out to the Walmart and Home Depot. And then what is called Planning Area J, that is on the north side of the I-70 interchange with Post Boulevard. That includes the dual brand hotel currently under construction, the Maverick gas station, and additional acreage that's zoned for mixed use development. So it's a statutory requirement that we have to have a defined boundary when we propose a downtown development authority formation, and that corresponds with the eligible voter list. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, that it's got a unique group of eligible voters that are specific to the formation of downtown development authorities. So we have a draft plan that has gone to Avon Planning Commission at their last meeting. They will be considering it a public hearing tomorrow night. It'll be presented to the Avon Council on June 13th and June 27th, also with public hearings. Now, with review of the Avon Planning Commission, review of the council, that's not complete adoption of the plan. A downtown development authority plan also has to be adopted by a downtown development authority board. So we'll talk about a special election for special election for August 29th. If that election's positive, then once a downtown development authority board is formed, they also have to review and approve the plan. But the draft plan, so everyone knows sort of what it is that's anticipated that this downtown development authority would do. Primary purpose is community housing. And that plan recognizes that having workforce housing so that businesses in Avon can actually fill their employee vacancies is a #1 priority for our economic health in our Avon core. It also recognizes that an increased residential population on our valley floor helps to support our local businesses. It's more customers and makes for a more vibrant community, and also promotes town's other goals of having a more walkable community, and having that critical mass of residents to go with mixed use commercial development on our valley floor. As proposed in the plan, 50% of the funding that would be generated is planned for investment into community housing. And then some other areas of investment are parking structures, recreation center expansion, construction of new parks, that's primarily in the Village at Avon, and reconstruction of streets in East Avon and Sun Road to support redevelopment. So if this is approved by the voters on August 29th, there's a separate downtown development authority board. It has to be between 5 to 11 seats, and must include one, but no more than one council member. Projects which are approved by the DDA have to be reviewed and approved by the DDA board, because all of these projects that we've discussed are development projects. They would also be reviewed by the Avon Planning and Zoning Commission, and then they would also be reviewed by the Avon Town Council. And then budgets are approved by the Downtown Development Authority Board and the Avon Town Council, and both have dual approval authority of budgets for the Downtown Development Authority. And just to highlight some of the ideas, this is the town core. Public parking structures, we're working on a potential public-private development proposal on Lot B adjacent to the Avon Center building and adjacent to the town hall, that may include a public parking structure. we've had long-term plans that the parking lot at the Avon Recreation Center could be the location of a public parking structure. And then we're also working on looking at long-range redevelopment plans for the Sun Road, what we call the Sun Road sub-area. That's the area that includes the post office, Walgreens, and First Bank. And that is a potential location for a public parking structure. And then there's also the idea that with the Sun Road area redevelopment or East Avon redevelopment, a component of that would be realignment, reconstruction of streets to help facilitate and support that redevelopment effort. And those ideas, especially East Avon, that goes all the way back to, I think, 2006, that we had some of our first plans that looked at what the town could do to promote redevelopment in that area. In the village at Avon, if you look on the left in the red, you'll see a pinkish area that's an odd shape that's got a B on it. That's planning area B. That's a 4-acre park. It's planned to include a large water feature in it. It may include other park amenities or cultural amenities. And the intent of that parcel is to create a high quality public space that integrates with adjacent mixed use development and incentivizes investment in a high quality development in that area. So
Eric,
that's,
sorry to interrupt. Are you able to use your cursor?
can you see that?
Eric, now we can.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
Perfect.
this would be planning area B. Thank you, Kristen. That's planning area B. And that exact location is likely to change so that it's coordinated with whatever mixed use development happens in that area. So that just, kind of covered some of the thoughts, some of what the anticipated funding would be used for. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Carl and Miguel to talk about the uniqueness of a downtown development authority and who exactly are eligible voters.
Thanks, Eric. I actually haven't seen your version of the PowerPoint. So if you can flip to the next slide, does it have our flow chart in it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think
Did you nuke our PowerPoint? Hey, Kristen, can you take control and pop it up? That would be fantastic.
Yes.
Cool. So while Kristen is getting that up for us, I'll just say really kind of the theory is keeping in mind that all of this works off of a one person, one vote, just like any other election does. It's just that how you qualify to be an elector is a little bit different in a DDA. So hopefully we'll get the slide up and it'll kind of walk us through how you get registered.
I have a disabled screen. Can someone allow me to share?
yes.
Sorry.
Try that, please.
Thank you. That should work. All right, how we looking?
Good. Let's just see if we can get down to, it's the slide 7. There you go. Let's make that the whole screen.
If you go to slideshow. Oh,
Slideshow, I'm gonna let it drop down, Kristen. Okay, so that you're top. Slideshow.
To the right.
There you go.
And from current slide.
Thank you.
Second from the left.
Huh.
There we go. Click that. All right. So we really have 3 buckets that people fall into that are eligible to vote in the DDA. We have residents who you might think of just like any other registered voter. If you are a registered voter or resident within the DDA, the proposed DDA boundaries, you're going to get a ballot mailed to you just like you would in any other election. Where it gets a little bit different is if you are a landowner or a lessee. The statute is very specific that both landowners and lessees have a right to vote in these elections. And so a landowner, as you see there on the screen, is any owner in fee of an undivided interest in real estate. And you need to be a natural person over the age of 18 years old. So that does not include timeshares because those are not undivided interests. So it is if you have, if say you and your spouse or you and your siblings are on a title to a property, you are eligible to vote, and you will have a ballot mailed to you automatically at your property's mailing address, whatever that is listed as. So very similar to what a special district election would feel like if you've been through one of those as a voter. A nuance in both the landowners and the lessees is that oftentimes, particularly for commercial properties, you're holding a lease or you are a landowner in a business entity name. And so if that's the case, then how you as an entity exercise your vote is a little bit different. Before I jump to the next slide, which will kind of go through a flow chart on that, I will say, so lessees, you hold a lease within the district. That could be a long-term residential lease or a commercial lease, and you're 18 years or older. If that is in your personal name, then you need to register with Miguel, and he will walk through how you get that done after I get through this portion of the presentation. So let's pop to the next slide if we could, Kristen. All right, so we're going to start with talking about just individuals. And this flow chart kind of helps out on whether or not how you get your ballot. So if you are registered to vote and your address is inside the boundary, you're going to automatically get a ballot. If you are an individual that holds property in your own name and within the boundaries, you're going to get a ballot in the mail at the address that is associated with that property. If you are an individual and you lease property, you are going to request a ballot. And there again, we didn't get it filled in, but Miguel is going to go over what the deadline is for that to get that request for a ballot in place and an affidavit filed so that you can vote. If you are an entity, and I just need to minimize so I can see, there we go. If you are an entity, that could be a corp, LLC, partnership, anything that is held in a name other than in an entity name, not your own personal name. There's a couple of different paths. You may own the property or you may be a leaseholder. In either one of those cases, you must designate an individual who is over the age of 18 to vote on the entity's behalf. Now, going back to where I started with, it is one vote, one individual. The person that entity designates cannot already be receiving a ballot either from another designation or in their individual capacity. If you do, then those ballots are going to be disqualified because you voted twice. So just keep in mind that you need to designate somebody who isn't already voting in the election for some other reason. And there again, the entity voter designation, you need to file an affidavit of designation and request a ballot. And there again, Miguel here in just a second is going to go over what the deadline is on that. So that's how it feels complicated. It's actually pretty straightforward. Just remember, one vote, one person. If you are an entity, request a ballot. To request a ballot, you need to designate somebody who isn't otherwise authorized to vote in the district. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Miguel to talk about deadlines.
Hey, Carl, this is Tony Emmerich. One quick question. What about individual trusts? Would that be an individual or an entity?
If the trust is it would be treated as an entity where you would need to request and designate because that property is held in the trust's name or that lease is held in the trust's name and not in the individual's name.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. As Carl was kind enough to explain, so those are the three categories under which you can cast a vote. We will be, once this goes before council toward the end of the month of June, and we get approval, we'll be able to fill out all of the specific dates by which you need to request a ballot, which is why for now we've left it blank. Once that gets approved,
Miguel, could
we-
you, either this is going to go forward or not. So could you give folks just what the anticipated likely deadlines are going to look like?
Sure. The anticipated deadlines for individuals, you can come by, and if you didn't get a ballot in the mail and you're a resident within the DDA boundary, we'll give you a ballot here so that you can cast your vote. And that'll be on August 29th. And for entities and partnerships, it will be, depending on what you would like, we can hand deliver it to you here in the municipal building if you would like to pick it up, or you can fill out an application to have it mailed to you. And there again, we would just have to receive that before the August 29th deadline.
Great. I think that covers that piece, and I think we can probably turn it back over to Eric to do his couple of wrap-up slides.
See if I can- All right, are you seeing that then?
Yes.
Okay, so again, just to wrap up, we've got public hearings by the town council on June 13th and 27th. They will be considering an ordinance that would adopt this boundary and take action to set a special election on August 29th, as well as taking a look at the draft Downtown Development Authority plan. Special elections proposed for Tuesday, August 29th. That allows for time to discuss the concepts and the functioning in the Downtown Development Authority plan, as well as answer questions about eligible voters, which I think I anticipate is going to be a complex topic that there will probably be a lot of work by staff, Miguel and Carl and Kristen, to help people understand those eligible voter requirements. And then we're at the same time, we're doing an employer survey that's active right now, that we're trying to get employers to give us input on their needs for employee housing and how the lack of employee housing may be affecting their businesses. And with that, that's their presentation. I'm putting Kristen's email address and my email address for anyone who may have questions. And I'm going to leave that up for just another second.
And we do know that it is complicated as in terms of who is eligible to vote. So that's why we are, as Eric mentioned, more than happy to help walk through specific scenarios, questions as best as we can.
So maybe the last thing I would say about this, just to give a feel for what this may be, because it's based on tax increment financing, that means we capture the increase of value from new construction. So that increment of new value, the property tax that would go to all taxing entities, the Town of Avon, Eagle County, Eagle School Districts, fire, ambulance, a couple other small taxing entities in there. We would capture the property tax increase that would otherwise go to all those other entities, and then that could be used by the Downtown Development Authority. The West Town Center Urban Renewal Authority currently is capturing about 1.8 million a year. And so the money that may come to this Downtown Development Authority really depends upon the pace of new construction and the value quantity of new construction. And so it may be a few years before there's any type of significant revenue to the Downtown Development Authority to be used for potential projects. So with that said, that covered a lot. We're certainly open to any questions.
I have a question. This is
Yes,
Tamara.
Tamara.
Hi. It sounds like, Miguel, that the only deadline for the affidavit of designation, if you're a business, whether you're a lessee or a landowner or a trust or whatever the case may be, the only deadline is election day, August 29th. Is that right? To turn in your affidavit of designation?
That to turn in the affidavit of designation and to turn in the ballot, yes.
Okay, great.
We will be
Great.
reviewing those that day at the latest. Hopefully people will be able to get them to us sooner. But that's election day, and if that's the day that they're able to hand those in, we'll take the time to make sure that they're qualified voters and that they're eligible to vote, and that the person they've designated hasn't cast a vote already in this election. Just a reminder that because it is a one person, one vote election, if you're casting a vote because you're registered to vote within the boundaries of the DDA, you need to find an alternate to make use of the vote that you would have as a property owner, as a company that's a property owner or as a leaseholder.
Great, thanks for that explanation. And then with respect to the DDA plan, that sounds like it's the governing document. I'm interested on how we are assured on the council's behalf and the voters' behalf, how we're assured that the board complies with the plan, and the plan says at least 50% of funding in the DDA will be spent on community housing. How are we assured that that's really what the board will do for 30 years going forward?
So it requires concurrent approval. The DDA the DDA board doesn't have independent authority to adopt either the plan or the budget.
Okay.
So again, the process, Eric, is planning commission puts forward to council their recommendation on the proposed plan as drafted. Then council votes on it. Then there's the vote of the people on August 29th. And then the newly organized governing board of the DDA, if the DDA passes, reviews that plan.
Correct.
And
So it's a plan document, so it can be changed at any time. It doesn't have to go back to another vote. And if if in the public, the interest on the DDA board says, hey, we don't think housing's important. We think we need to build the biggest indoor mini golf center, and that's really what's going to be beneficial, then that's they don't have independent authority to just approve that. That would generate a discussion, and there would, that would need to get reconciled between council and the DDA board. Planning commission's role in the statutes, it says it reviews the plan, but unlike other development plans, this doesn't show architectural renderings or specific uses. It's really more financial. That's similar to the Urban Renewal Authority. Urban Renewal Authority didn't include a lot of pictures and specific proposals for development projects. It just had a narrative that said, here's the types of things that the Urban Renewal Authority could be used to financially support improvements that would incentivize development. And so I think that's one of the nuances. The statute does say planning commission reviews, but I think functionally the planning commission review is more under a traditional development code review, that whether it's a park or a street or a new hotel or a residential apartment building, we have procedures in our development code where the planning commission has a role in reviewing those specific projects when they come about.
And I see you have some questions in the chat, if you could look at those from Al. Maybe one needs to go back to the map if it's not clear, the areas you were talking about. And then the next one is about eligibility of use of the housing.
Al had asked the question about the cursor, and Kristen brought that to my attention earlier. Al's question is initial thoughts about access to community housing. We're, at this point, we're not contemplating that the Downtown Development Authority would be used for Town of Avon employees only. I do think there is likely to be a sentiment and interest that there's some set aside, some percentage of housing that is for essential workers. Many of the other resort communities have that idea of recognizing that category. That's a little flexible. There's not a universal definition of essential workers, but it's basically the people that need to be physically in place to provide important public services. And that can include fire officers, police officers, teachers, snowplow drivers. And I always try to acknowledge, it doesn't include town manager as an essential employee that needs to be on site. But that's the idea. And so I suspect that idea will probably be discussed as part of this process, that there may be some amount of housing that has a priority for essential workers. But otherwise, the idea is that it would promote housing. And I'll elaborate on that we are hoping to move forward with a grant application to come up with a regional housing action plan. And I suspect Avon over the next 10 years is going to have goals of between 1,000 to 2,000 units of housing. So I think there's a strong recognition by council that we need workforce housing at every rung in the income economic ladder, and housing for rental and for ownership. So,
Eric, is there any chance you could pop back up the map again? I think that would be a good way to conclude, just to review again the boundary map, and we can kind of highlight, where we know there's residents and landowners and business lessees. It just might be good to get people thinking visually to conclude with that boundary map.
let's see if I can bring up the.
Yes.
All right, you're all seeing that.
And then using your cursor, I think that'll be super helpful.
All right, so if I go back through some of the thoughts of how this would be used. So this area is really.
And who's eligible to vote too,
Oh,
more importantly.
Right. I mean, I guess I would just say, let me jump in, Eric, if you, inside of that proposed boundary, if you own property, own a business, really those are, the two big buckets, right? Or you're registered to vote and live within those areas, then you can participate in this election. If you own a business or own land in a entity name, either one of those things, long-term leasehold or own property or in an entity name, you do need to contact Miguel to get your designation made. If you are a property owner or a registered voter, you are going to receive a ballot at whatever address you have listed, either as a property owner or as a registered elector.
And what it looks like to designate someone is just you coming out into our town offices, and you'll fill out first a form that states in what capacity you're requesting a ballot, whether it is because you own or you rent or you have a business inside those boundaries. And then the designation is also a second form, a separate form that says you are eligible to designate, and who you're designating, at the person being designated is accepting that designation. They're pretty straightforward forms that can be filled out, both of them in less than 5 minutes for you to be able to fill out your ballot.
Great. One last comment I would make to Al's question is Town of Avon uses a definition for eligible residents for housing that's similar to Vail and Eagle County. That's basically, you have to work 30 hours per week, 8 months a year for someone in Eagle County. And so we don't limit it to only workforce housing for Avon businesses. It can be anyone that's working in Vale, Beaver Creek, Edwards, Minturn, as well as Avon. Anywhere in the county. Any other questions at this time? We had the contact information before. I would certainly encourage anyone, if you've got questions, to follow up with contacting Kristen or myself, and we'll just keep at trying to answer the questions as they come in as we go through this process. And again, reminder that council will have a public hearing on June 13th and June 27th, and those who are interested are certainly welcomed and encouraged to attend that hearing, and let us know any comments if you support this or have questions or concerns about the proposal to form a downtown development authority.
Thank you. Are we done?
I think we're
We
done.
are.
I suspect
All
we
right.
probably all have a busy week. It's Monday morning. And so thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.